Skies Above the Reich. This is a solitaire game by GMT. It is a war game of air combat set in World War II, and interesting enough, the perspective is that of the Germans. In so many games of this kind that have to do with bombers and interceptors and fighters, well, you control the bombers and the escorts, and you're trying to reach a target and to bomb it. Here is the other way around. It's a solitaire game, and the player controls the German defenders that are trying to intercept the enemy bombers. They're trying to go past the escorts and to inflict as much damage as possible to this heavy formation of bombers. So right there, interesting idea. It's a game that is reminiscent of other war games with a similar topic. B-17 comes to mind, if nothing else, because of the strong narrative and the very strong attention to detail, and the fact that a lot of different things may happen. There really is a narrative depth that results in a very detailed narrative. I'm thinking also the Leader series by DVG. As you will see, you are able to purchase weapons and upgrades, and that reminded me of that. But in general, trust me, this is a pretty original game. It is very different from its progenitors. You will see the map. It looks like pretty much nothing that I've seen in wargaming before. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at Skies Above the Reich. To play the game, you will need a log that you use to keep track of the mission that you're playing, the year, the map you're using, and so on and so forth. And on the other side of the log, you have the very important pilot roster, where you keep track of what happens to your pilots. You have a number of pilots that you start with, and they may be expert, green, or regular. The regular type doesn't have a dedicated column. The expert do, because here's where you make a note of the special skills that they have, and the green pilots also have a column because this is where you keep track of the penalties that they have. Now, at the beginning of each mission, you roll on a table that will tell you several important things. The first of which is which map you use. There are several maps. They are on nice, beautiful mounted boards, such as this one. So first you determine the map that you will use. Different maps have different size and different configurations of enemy formations. Then you roll to determine if the target that you're attacking is inbound, outbound, or near target. Different things will happen based on that. For example, if the formation that you're attacking is near target, you also take Flak into account, otherwise you don't. Other things that you have to roll for is the number of points that you receive at the beginning to purchase upgrades. There are several things that you can add to your flights, to your aircraft. You can give them armor, you can give them cannon, you can give them rockets, different types of things. But also you need to spend those points to purchase aircraft, because what's the point of having armor and rockets if there's nowhere to fly those? Now, you have two main types of aircraft. One is the named aircraft with a named pilot, and these are your basic aircraft, and they represent BF 109. Then you can also spend resource points at the beginning of a mission to acquire extra models, to acquire different types of aircraft that will accompany you. Next, we check to see if our target has an escort. It's important. You're buying all of your defenses and extra weapons, armor, rockets, bombs, and all that before you know if the escort is there, which is, well, that really makes sense. Then you roll to determine if there is an escort. If that is the case, you will use tokens representing the aircraft of the escort, and you will place them at the beginning on this display here. You roll on this table here to determine where they go. For example, suppose that in this mission there is light escort with 5 enemy aircraft, and we roll here and determine that at the beginning 2 of those are in the forward position and 3 are below trailing, And of course, again, let's assume that we had determined by a previous roll, that this escort is made of Spitfire. During the game, the escort will move from one box to the other as they are circling the area, but then from there they will also peel off and actually reach the main map. The main map. Speaking of which, now, the main map is divided in different approach areas. That's not probably the technical name. In different areas, such as these ones, where you're moving around the information before you actually go in. So you are figuring out your position, you are deciding where to approach, and then you enter the main area. The main area, or should say the attack area, represents the bombers. Each bomber can be attacked by the 4 spaces adjacent to it. Bombers are also divided in elements, which are larger groupings of areas. One other thing that you determine during setup, several other things. For example, whether the sun is a factor or not, in which case then you also roll to determine the position. Something I like very much, whether the formation you're attacking is anchored to another one, that is close to another formation that is just next to the map, although you can't see it. Suppose, for example, that there is another formation right next to the tail position low. All that does is simply blocks an area, blocks a box in which your fighters cannot enter, because heck, then you would be flying between 2 big formations. That is really unwise. And I like that not just because of the game element, the game challenge, but also because, well, of the thematic element. Because it really gives me the sense that this is not the edge of the board, is not the end of the world. This is part of a larger situation. Speaking of situations, yes, again, during setup, I know setup seems a little long, but there are a couple of things to do, but it's not too bad. There is a situation manual in which we will roll to determine what happened to these people, to the target, before you met them. Again, I like the fact that it doesn't look like this is in the middle of nowhere in a bubble, but it really is part of a space and part of time. It is part of our reality. Suppose, for example, that we are using map 2 and we are on a mission that is inbound. Then we look at the situation manual on this section here, map 2 inbound. If we were near target on map 2, we would use these pages. If we were outbound, we would use these pages. And you roll to determine if the aircraft, again, this is where you determine if the formation is anchored, the sun, but also what happened to these people. So you roll a d10, and the corresponding picture tells you if any of your target bombers already have taken damage, in which case you apply that damage. Also, you see tactical points that you will spend during the mission, and you receive a flight limit, which is the maximum length of the mission. So, as you can see, enormous variety of things that can happen. Yes, it makes things a little bit laborious, but then you have so many different missions and situations that it's totally worth it. Now, we will have your aircraft entering the board. At the beginning, the first phase of each turn is the move phase, in which your aircraft move either from outside of the map onto the map, or from one box to another in these areas here. During the move phase, they can only move within this area. Then when they attack, they enter this central area, and that is then when from there they can reach different other areas. But the move phase, you enter the board, or you move here. Now, when you enter the board, you can only enter a low box, because that's entering. Oh, I wanted to enter there, but it's anchored, so that would be a bad idea. Let's say that we are entering 2 people here. So during the move phase, we get to move there. And suppose that we were there from previous turn, then this time we decide to move from a box to another. Now, when you move to a box to another, you follow the arrows that are indicated there. And it's very small, maybe you can see, it says 0 TP. That means then to move the aircraft there costs 0 tactical points. Tactical points you use to perform fancy maneuvers. If, for example, I want to move from low directly to high here in the flank area in which I am, I'll need to spend a tactical point, and I do so. Boom. So I go there. So we just move from a box to another. If you're here, again, spending tactical points or not, you can also reach an approach area. And suppose that, again, this turn, we were there at the beginning of the turn, so during the movement phase, I moved those two aircraft there. After that, you have the return phase. As you can see, these areas are surrounded by 2 return phases, one on the low side and one on the high side. There is the regular return and the evasive return. Aircraft can be in one or two states when they attack. They can be determined or they can be evasive. Simply put, when they then come back from a fight in the center of the board, wherever they go, in the area in which they return, they will reach the evasive return box if they were in evasive state mode, or regular return if they were in determined state. After the move phase, you have the return, which is simply aircraft that are in the return get to move by 1 box. This is simply a way of keeping track of the fact that the people that were in evasive maneuver will take longer before they are able to get in a position that they can then use to reach an approach and attack position. So first you move, enter, move, go in position, then return, and then the escort phase. Remember those pesky escorts? Here we go. That's when you roll here. For each area in which they are, you roll a die and you consult the table to see what one of them does. For example, I'm rolling for this space here, I rolled a 3, so this guy goes in the above trailing station. It's moving from one area to the other here in the escort display. And suppose that for this one, we rolled a 7. So for this box, I take 1, 7 tells me flank level 2, 4 o'clock. And so we get to the flank area, out there, the 2 or 4 o'clock level. There you go. So basically, and then the escorts will stay there until they move to attack. If they enter an area in which there are some of your aircraft, you resolve combat immediately. Otherwise, during the escort phase, they will move if there is one of your aircraft adjacent to them. Then they move. They move to attack. In which case, you resolve combat between the escort and your aircraft. The combat table for that looks a little daunting, but fear not. What happens here is that you will look at the line of the row representing the type of aircraft that you have that is being attacked by the escort. Then you answer 2 questions. Are the fighters higher than the escort? Suppose no, then we use this line here. Are there more fighters than escorts? Suppose yes. Then basically, as you can see, model and these 2 factors determine the line that you will use. You cross-reference that with the type of enemy that is attacking. Say it's a Spitfire. At this point, you roll a die and you implement the result. I'm not going to get into detail, but you can pause, look at this table, and probably you can get a sense of what these things mean. Also, there will be modifiers based on well, if you have been damaged or if you are carrying extra stuff that makes you less agile. So this is how you resolve combat with the escorts. A lot of bad stuff may happen. Maybe both the escort and the aircraft break off. Who knows what happens. Then we have the recovery phase. The recovery phase. It may be that in the previous turn some of your aircraft were damaged. They have this marker here on them, and they don't move if I have that marker. Now, during the recovery phase, you roll a die, and based on the result, it may be that the that it turned out that this was just nothing. It was a trivial problem, so you simply ignore the marker and you put it back in the cup. And this is what you use to draw them randomly. It may be, however, that that was not trivial, in which case, I shouldn't have thrown it in which case you look at the type of damage that was, say that was rudder, and you place the aircraft on the corresponding area in the fate table. Pretty much that is out of the game. Rudder goes here. That aircraft is out of this mission. At the end of the mission, you will roll for each of your aircraft there to see what happens to them. Very B-17. Will they land? Will they crash? Will they bail out? Will the aircraft catch on fire? Very B-17, which is not a bad thing at all. It's a compliment because B-17 is one of the classic war games, well, of all time, really. One of the most, of all time, one of the most beloved war games, and also one of the sources of inspiration for this game. But then there's also so much more here. Now, the recovery phase. You're wondering, when do we attack? Almost there, friends, almost there. Blast and flak. This is a special phase in the turn sequence that you resolve if there is flak to be resolved near the target, or if among the things that you brought there were bombs or there were rockets. And I'm not going to get into detail. Again, I'll just want to let you know that there is a procedure for that. Use this at a table here. You roll 2 dice, one to determine where exactly your rocket or bomb fall, because that's not that accurate, and one to determine how much damage they cause. They will also affect the cohesion of the target, which we check next. In the cohesion phase, if there are markets on the board that may affect the cohesion of the situation, then you roll to determine if the cohesion degrades or not. The cohesion may be in good order, in which case there is no marker there, may be loose, in which case they get this marker here, which reduces the lethality of the area, or they may even be kaput. Basically during the cohesion phase, based on the number of markers that are in a certain element, you determine if the formation in that element is still tight or kind of like falling apart. And based on the result, the cohesion may stay the same, may degrade, may improve. So the cohesion will be good, loose, or kaput. And suppose again that this is the situation. I talk about the lethality. Something important that you may have noticed, these small numbers here in the spaces around the bombers. This is the lethality, how dangerous that space is, how thick things are, which however also means how many good targets are there. Finally, what you wanted to know, time to attack. Hooray. With all of your aircraft which are in approach areas, and suppose that we have several, with all of those you get to attack. For each of them, well, first you mark the altitude. This is coming from high altitude. You use these blocks here to record altitude, so we know that this comes from high. No blocks means from low, and 1 block means from level. Then you choose the target that you are going to approach, and you also choose 2 more things. Suppose that this one wants to go here, wants to attack that guy. Now you're coming from here, so we put it on this side here. If you're coming from here, we put it right in front. We're attacking from the nose, and then we have flank and tail. And you face it in a way that you remember what's going on. For each aircraft that is attacking, you also choose if you're determined or evasive. That will determine several things, several results. Also, you decide where you're going next. You can dive or climb as you are approaching the target. Dive or climb. Dive means that you're going towards the low box of the area in which you're directed, in which you're going to go. Climb means that you're trying to get in the high box of the area where you're going. Also, if you use this side of the marker, it means you're going straight. So basically, this guy straight will go that way. This guy going straight will go this way. If you use this other side, the roll, you are turning, and so you can indicate, suppose that this one wants to go there, so that one will go that way, and this one, if this one wants to roll, and suppose this one wants to roll that way. So a lot of variety, a lot of variability there. Again, because you're moving, so you're taking into account where the heck are you going to end up after you attack. Now, again, there are a couple of things that you need to take into account. I'm not giving you the entire tutorial because it would take too long, but I do want to give you a sense of how combat works. There are different decks of combat cards depending on the type of attacks that you're performing. For example, if you're performing an oblique attack, then you use this deck here. This other aircraft here is performing a nose attack, so we'll use this other deck here. Simply put, for each aircraft that attacks, you draw a card from the deck that corresponds to that attack. Again, suppose the nose. And then you look at the lethality of the area, which may be affected by a variety of things, too many to count. Suppose that when all is said and done, here the lethality is going to be 3. So you draw a card from the corresponding attack, and you look at the column for the lethality, suppose 3. Cross-reference that with the altitude you're at, high, level, or low, suppose we are level, and then within that you look at the box that corresponds to your mode, which may be evasive or determined. Suppose that this guy was actually determined, coming 3 level, the result is that he takes a hit, he delivers a hit, and also will move by 2. The numerical that you have there simply is the number of spaces that you move following the direction that you have indicated when you selected the maneuver. And so, for example, this guy will go 1 and 2, like that. But then we had to resolve the hit. To resolve the hit that it was inflicted on the enemy, you draw a counter from this boxy, from this whatever container you want to use, and there's a chance for a catastrophic. You roll a die. The catastrophic number is that when you roll a die, and you determine if indeed a catastrophic result happened, in which case the target may be fallen, that symbol the arrow, or may be destroyed. If the aircraft passes the test, then there isn't a catastrophic result that takes the target off the air. And so you flip that to the other side, and simply that becomes a number of hit points. So you destroy the enemy either by inflicting a catastrophic result or by totaling 10 points of damage over them. After that, after you determine whether or not you took damage, you inflicted damage, you took damage, you draw these counters, and we saw what happens with those. After you determine that, and after you move, you may choose to continue fire. There is a card from that. You draw a card, and well, you see what happens. I'm not gonna spoil the surprise for you. Finally, you reach your destination. This guy, for example, remember, was rolling and diving in this direction, so I'm gonna place that guy there, and that's where that aircraft will be at the beginning of the next movement phase. That one was rolling in that direction, rolling the direction, and going high will end up there. And there are a lot of more specific cases, but this is the general sense. I just want to give you an overview, which I hope will help you learn the game. There's no replacement for learning the game other than read the rulebook while you are playing the first game, set up the game, and go with the rulebook, execute the rules as you see them. But the general flow is, once you know what you're doing, is actually quite fluid, if nothing else, because not everything will apply every turn. You move You return, which is just an automatic movement. You check what the escorts are doing and possibly resolve combat. You check what the situation is with damage that was inflicted in the previous turn. Possibly you resolve blast and flak, which may not be the case. You check the cohesion of the elements and you attack. In truth, is really, you will feel a lot more like moving, attacking with a couple of other things, which is really, what a war game should be. Updates and upkeeps and stuff like that, but mainly the main of the game should be on the action, and this is how the game works indeed. At the end of a mission, well, you check what happened to your pilots and aircraft in the fate boxes, you tally points, and you get ready to play the next mission. Now, I just gave you a general overview. There is just so much more stuff. There is advantage. There are different situations that may emerge. It is a game that will feel a little daunting at the beginning to anybody, even to seasoned war gamers. If nothing else, because the manual has to cover pretty much every case that may occur, but in a single game or in a single mission, most likely you will not see all of these things. Some of these results maybe will be quite a while before you have to read the exact procedure to resolve them. So what I suggest doing is set up the game and read the manual as you go along, and just do things as simply as possible. Don't go near target the first mission, so you don't have to worry about flak. Don't give rockets and bombs to your pilots, so you don't have to deal with those procedures. And you will see that naturally things then start moving pretty quick, and then you start adding those layers. This being said, even after you get past that learning curve, it is probably a game that is still gonna feel a little bit daunting to beginner war gamers. Again, seasoned war gamers, after the first impact, they are in for a treat and a ride. And beginner war gamers too, if they are willing to put in all the extra effort. But it's still pretty advanced, pretty complex war game. But if you put in the effort, oh my goodness, this is a good game. I liked it so much. This really has become, to me, it's like a modern classic already. Boom, instant classic, right there with B-17, with the Air Leader series. Wow. Why? Because it has all of the good things that I saw in those precedents that I love so much without feeling derivative at all. And just before we get into the nitty-gritty detail, just the general idea is the general feel that I have. It feels incredibly immersive, not just in the sense in which the word immersive is used these days. Very often people use it just to mean engrossing, which it is. But immersive in the sense that you are flipping there. It really had the sense of this three-dimensional situation that really sucks you in. You really had the sense that the edges of the boards are not the end of the world. You have the sense of time that progresses. And to me, something that is always difficult to capture in board games about air combat, of course, is the three-dimensionality. And here it really does a good job of representing the situation that is portrayed by the theme in a way that feels right and really feels three-dimensional. You really do have the sense of this cube, this block of heavy fighters with those pesky escorts that are moving around, and they find a nice spot and just wait for you to move there. And you don't know exactly where they're gonna go next, and you yourself are moving around this like big block and trying to figure out where to go and how to enter it. And you get in from one way, and you can then maneuver in the block as everybody's firing at you, and you try to deliver a hit. You really get this sense of organic synergy of all the parts of movement, of fluid movement. You forget almost that you're looking at a static map. You really have this sense of movement, progression, and organicity that I found remarkable. When it comes to more to the details, again, every action seems right. It's true you had to remember specific procedures, you had to learn a specific procedure for so many different things. But then the payoff is that really the bombs seem to behave in a way that makes thematically sense while presenting an interesting challenge, because you had to get to the high bombing situation, and then turns out that the escorts have figured that out. Of course, it's just die rolls, but it really feels like those die rolls read your mind, and the escorts are where they shouldn't be, where you don't want them to be. It's about spending tactical points. You may be a little liberal at the beginning, but then you're like, oh no, now I need that maneuver to get around the escorts. I don't have the tactical points. So it's about using the right procedures at the right time. But again, it's the amazing thing is the variety of things that you can do. This again with great replay value, because there's so many things that you can attempt and so many things that the game may throw at you that it's going to be a long time before you see them all, before you experiment them all, or before they get stale. I really don't think that that's going to happen very likely, because in one game the escort are going to do something crazy and then Europe is going to break off and you're presented with a certain challenge. The next time you try with a different formation, different upgrades, different extra fighters, something crazy happens, events happen during the continuing fire, a gap opens in the enemy formation, try to exploit it, and guess what, they're able to regain cohesion before you're able to exploit it. In a sense, it's hard for me to pinpoint this or that thing. I could make a list of all the things that could happen and we would be here all day, and at the end you'll be like, I got confused anyways, I forgot what you said 10 hours ago. You really had to try it. That's one of the beauty of this type of games, one of the beauties of the original B-17. I keep mentioning it because in a sense the feel is very similar. Although I must say, if it doesn't sound heretical, from the point of view of gameplay, Skies Above the Reich is superior to B-17 to me. It is superior because of the higher number of things that you can do, the different approaches that you can take. It is definitely more tactical, complex, tactically sophisticated, and the theme emerges much more from the mechanics than just from the result on the tables. That is, in B-17, it's almost like a choose your own adventure book. It's almost like a game book in that you roll on a table and you're told what happens, and you roll another table that tells you what happens next. Here you're making the decision of maneuvering around that cube and dropping that bomb from up there as somebody else was coming from another direction. You are attacking from different directions to exploit certain things and get certain bonuses that I didn't get to talk to, but that's another big element of the game. When you get on the target, if you're attacking with aircraft from different directions, different altitude, you get a bonus. If there's a concentration of aircraft, you get a bonus. But then if you're concentrating too many of your people, you have to make sure they don't bump against each other. So there will be a huge amount of things that happen, but again, they come out more organically from the interaction of what you do and how you move things and how the game reacts to you, as opposed to sometimes, like say, in B-17, it goes a little bit on autopilot. And to me, probably this is what makes this game so special. There is a very tight connection between the mechanics, okay, the strategy, and so you're using the mechanic in order to pursue your in-game goals, and the resulting story as you're playing the game, using the mechanics to pursue your in-game goals. Things happen that feel thematic. The story emerges very naturally, very fluidly from the mechanics of the components. The components are great. You're there. You really feel like you are in this war movie where crazy things happen, and yet they feel clear. They feel captivating, and clear in the sense that once you know what you're doing, the action is fast. The game doesn't feel confusing. There can be quite a bit of counters on the map, but it doesn't feel cluttered, and everything feels right. You're controlling an action that probably in a movie will feel confusing because the movie would cut from one scene to the other, but you get the control. You get to see what all of these moving elements do, and the moving picture that comes out is one that is absolutely exciting. I cannot recommend this game enough to committed wargamers, especially. I'm not sure about beginner ones. Maybe 6 months from now. Oh, my beginning wargamer viewer. But this is a great game. This is also a great game. It's probably, no, most certainly one of the best war games that they played in 2018. Instant classic. I think this is one of those games that 10, 20 years from now we'll be talking about it. I don't know if it's the new B17 because it's very different from it, and also because the higher level of complexity may narrow a little bit the range of people that will be interested in playing it. But for those willing to put in the work to learn Skies Above the Reich, this is a truly special game. It is thematic, it is mechanically very tight, and it is just a joy to play. Skies Above the Reich, give it a try. It is that good. Probably even better than that.